and welcome to the CSE the mains initiative. So as you are aware, under this initiative we discuss the daily question with you, right? So the question for today is as displayed in front of you, right? So the question says, the inability of the Security Council to effectively address global challenges demonstrates the urgent need for UN Security Council reforms in order to better reflect the contemporary geopolitical realities and to enhance its effectiveness and legitimacy, right? In the light of this statement, the question is asking you to discuss what reform measures can be taken in the UNSC to make it more relevant. Right? Now see, in this question you have to address this question, as I discussed in the discussion earlier, is on the difficult side because it has been formulated as per the UPSC standards. It's not a straightforward question. It has a big introductory line and then the question is asked. So usually what happens is students usually ignore this line, this statement, give some introduction, some vague introduction, writing about UN and all, and then they try to directly jump to the question, right? That is an approach that you have to avoid for this question, right? You have to address all the parts of the question, including this statement that is introducing you to the question, right? Each element of this statement has to be addressed while writing the question, right? Now let's start from the first line. The inability of the Security Council to effectively address global challenges, right? Now you see, there are different kind of global challenges and it is saying that the Security Council is unable to effectively deal with it, right? So अब पहले हम, before we discuss the exact answer, we will just discuss the elements that should be there in this answer. सबसे पहले you have to show that how UNSC has been unable or ineffective in ensuring the in meeting the global challenges, right? So here you will use examples like Russia-Ukraine war. अब देखिए UNSC किस लिए बनी है? To prevent war, to ensure peace, to ensure stability. But this Russia-Ukraine war is an example how UNSC has failed to achieve the objective, right? ऐसे ही Russia's annexation of Crimea is another example of the ineffectiveness of UNSC. Then Israel's bombing of Palestine, or the terrorist attacks that are happening all around the world, or the refugee crisis that the world is witnessing, right? These are all the examples of how UN and UN Security Council, they have failed to achieve the objective for which they are established, right? ये तो हो गया first line के element. These are some of the examples that you can use. You can mention n number of examples, जितनी आपको आती है, you can try to incorporate in this answer. This will be very useful, right? Vividly demonstrate the urgent need of UN Security Council reforms in order to better reflect contemporary geopolitical realities. Now this is another important, ये सब issues हैं, इसके लिए हमें reforms चाहिए. But then they also say कि सिर्फ इसके failures ही reason नहीं है, but the second reason is also that it is not representing the current geopolitical reality, right? What does that mean? That now the world has changed a lot. Initially when UN was established, at that time US, UK, Russia, USSR were great powers, so they got the permanent membership seat. But now the reality of the world has changed a lot. You are witnessing new countries emerging as the powerful countries like India, like Japan, like Germany, right? So what this line means, this just says that the UN that was established 75 years ago, and the various tools and instruments that were established in UN and UNSC, they are no longer serving the geopolitical realities. The changed realities of the world are not being met by this old organization and its tools, right? For that also reforms are required. First reason is failures, second is changing geopolitical reality, right? And next, to increase its effectiveness and legitimacy, we need UN reforms, right? When it is failing to ensure the interest of larger population of the world, that means it will not be seen as an effective or legitimate organization. There are several fingers that are rising against the functioning of UN, right? Now, so to ensure that these failures are checked, the geopolitical realities are checked, and to ensure effectiveness and legitimacy, reforms will be required. The question then asks you to write about those reforms, right? So अब आपको पूरा आंसर लिखना होगा जिसमें आप ये सारे पार्ट्स इनकॉर्पोरेट करें, right? You can start by saying the introduction can talk about general UN and its failures. You can just start by discussing the Russia-Ukraine war, how it is a representative of the declining effectiveness and legitimacy of UN, how the UN is unable to ensure its own functioning or the objectives are met, right? How the UN is failing, that you can showcase in the introduction, right? Then in the body part, you will address the first part, just writing inability of UNSC in meeting the global challenging. You will write all these examples, right? Then you will write the next part, how it is not meeting the global geopolitical realities. Just write there that the world politics has changed, the balance of power has now shifted to many other countries, new democracies have emerged, countries like India, who are the founding members and also the most populous countries, they are not represented in the UNSC as a permanent member, right? The largest population is not represented at the UNSC permanent seat. Then how can this organization be representative of the entire world, right? So you will say that it is not meeting the geopolitical realities of today, where the balance of power has shifted, where stronger nations have emerged, stronger economies have emerged, where large population in the form of India not being the member is not represented, right? For all these reasons, again UN is ineffective, right? So then you will write, now to maintain the trust of the entire world population in UN, to ensure that UN meets the realities of today, the world realities of today, we need reforms, right? And that is where you will start addressing the next part, that is, what are the reforms that can be brought about in UNSC, what are the reforms that can be brought about in the UNSC. So what reforms can you suggest? One is adding more members into UNSC, more members into UNSC, both permanent and non-permanent, right? For जैसे ये देखिए Africa is also not represented, that also you can add to this part, right? So you can write that more African countries should be added so that UNSC is a more representative organization of today's realities, right? So that you can say that adding more members to UNSC is required, right? Reforms in the veto power, reforms in the veto power. Veto power, you should here briefly mention that veto power is a undemocratic power. It is being used by the permanent members to forward self interest, So we require reforms in the veto power. What reforms can be there? There should be checks and balances on the veto power first of all. If any country is using veto power, it needs to justify its stand in a written way, right? It should justify why it is doing whatever it is doing, right? Second is you can also propose to remove such veto power. There should be only democracy that should be used. All the 15 members or whatever the membership of UNSC is, all the members should democratically vote and the majority decision should be upheld. So you can say that it should be removed. If not removed, then certain checks and balances should be there. Certain checks and balances should be there on the use of veto power. The countries, the permanent countries should not be able to use it without any responsibility, right? उनकी responsibility बननी चाहिए, right? Then you can say allow criticism of all the actions that UNSC is taking by government or non-governmental organizations. There should not be obstruction on criticism of any actions that are taken by any particular member of UNSC or the UNSC combinedly. ठीक है, because we have always observed कि UNSC के members they do not allow any criticism to act against their interest, right? वो veto कर देते हैं ऐसी criticism वाले proposals को, right? They do not allow them to come into picture, so that has to be prevented, right? So such reforms you can present. You can say that members like India, the G4 members that are seeking for reforms, the G4 members and also the L969 countries, their claims should be considered, their claims should be taken into account, right? Because they are genuine claims that are seeking democratic reforms in the organization that is UNSC, right? So their claims should be considered. On all these lines, you can write the reforms, and finally you can conclude by saying that India needs to keep raising its voice for these reforms. It needs to get the seat at the permanent table of UNSC so that it can ensure the interest of the largest population of the world, so that it can ensure that national interests are presented at the international level, right? That is how you can wind up this question, right? I hope it helps. Thank you so much for watching.